kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight at 6. Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready for talks with President Putin if Russia agrees to a full, lasting ceasefire starting tomorrow. President Putin has called for direct negotiations on the 15th of May. And that came just hours after EU leaders demanded a 30-day truce during a summit in Kyiv. World leaders, including Macron, Starmer and Pope Leo XIV, are all backing those calls to end the war, with President Erdogan offering to host talks in Turkey. Fighting, though, is still ongoing, despite both sides accusing each other of breaching this week's agreed truce. Donald Trump says he does see a breakthrough, but Ukraine and Russia remain far apart. Pope Leo has called for no more war in his first Sunday address from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica since his election. He urged for an authentic and lasting peace in Ukraine and a ceasefire in Gaza with the release of all Israeli hostages. Recalling the end of World War II, he warned of a third world in pieces and quoted his predecessor, Pope Francis. Crowds packed into St. Peter's Square cheering as the bells tolled and marching bands played. The first American Pope also marked Mother's Day, wishing well to all mothers. Plans to ban overseas recruitment for care workers has been branded cruel by industry leaders and unions. Care England says the move is a crushing blow to a sector already struggling with staff shortages and rising costs. Unison warns visa applications have fallen off a cliff after dependents were banned from coming to the UK last year. Yvette Cooper, though, says the visa route will now close, but firms can still recruit from anywhere, people already here. Ministers say they want to prioritise UK training, though, and focus on higher skilled migration. A man's been arrested on suspicion of murder after a body was found in a river near Rotherham. Police discovered the man's body on Saturday evening following a missing persons report. The 42-year-old suspect remains in custody as detectives investigate what they're calling a tragic death. Officers say inquiries are at an early stage, but the victims' families have been informed and is being supported. South Yorkshire Police are urging anyone with information to come forward. The UK's record-breaking start to May's weather is about to take a hit, I'm sorry to say, with thunderstorms set to sweep across England and Wales from tomorrow. The Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning with risks of flash floods, power cuts and difficult driving conditions. Forecasters say some places could see hail, thunder and lightning, along with a sharp drop in temperature. The warning is in place from lunchtime tomorrow until 10 o'clock in the evening, covering almost all of Wales and a large stretch of England. That's it from me for now. A full roundup with all of the top stories at 7 o'clock. Now, though, it's over to Camilla.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. A big week for Westminster with immigration back at the top of the political agenda and those trade deals with India and the US. From Labour, we'll hear from the Member of Parliament for Bassett Law and Chair of the Red Wall Caucus, Jo White. I'm going to be asking her about the immigration white paper that's set to go before the Commons tomorrow. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, will be joining me to talk through the Tories' tough new immigration proposals. But why didn't they act more decisively in their own 14 years in power? Former Trade Secretary Sir Liam Fox is on the show to explain exactly what the US and India free trade agreements mean in practice and whether they'll actually deliver for Britain. Plus, Reform UK are still riding high in the polls. I'm going to be speaking to the party's deputy leader, Richard Tice, about their plan for governing and whether Nigel Farage's party has peaked too soon. Welcome back. Joining me now is the MP for Bassett Law and the chair of the Red Wall Caucus, Jo White. Lovely to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Let's get stuck into this immigration white paper and what we know of it, Jo. I mean, are you happy it goes far enough? I know particularly your constituents in Bassett Law are worried about high levels of legal and illegal immigration. We've got restrictions on student visas. We've got a demand for a higher standard of English to A-level standard for people coming in. Companies who fail to recruit enough English staff are going to lose some of their sponsor rights for foreign workers. Changes to Article 8 proposed, and foreigners who commit crimes are out.
It's a big step forward from what we had. Previously, it's been a bit of a free-for-all, particularly with coming out of the European Union. Rather than taking control of our immigrant numbers, we've increased them. If you look at 2023, we had net migration figure of 906,000. It went down last year to 728,000, but it's got to go down further. The migration figures are coming out very, very shortly. It's expected that they're going to go down again, but we've got to get them much more balanced, and that's the demand of the people in my constituency, is that what we have to focus on is jobs for British workers, and that's what we're requiring employers to do. So rather than automatically recruit overseas, we're requiring them to put skills training in place so that British workers can have those jobs. And for example, in the care sector, we're now requiring evidence that the care sector tries to recruit in this country before they even attempt to look overseas. It's absolutely essential that the jobs are based here. British workers are being trained up for those jobs, and so that we can rebuild our economy.
But aren't you concerned then by the India trade deal? Because it's being called a sort of two-tier tax system that favours Indian workers over British workers because of the exemption on their employers paying national insurance. Doesn't that create a system where it's going to be more favourable for people to employ Indian workers to look after the elderly in care homes, for instance, than it is British workers?
This is an exchange based on particular trades and requirements that we need. We have these agreements right across the world with other countries. For example, my daughter works in Paris. She does not contribute national insurance, pay national insurance contributions to France. She pays them back here. So those agreements already exist. And in fact, they were being negotiated with previous governments, and this is something that's automatically been added to, that's included as part of the trade deals agreed last week. It's part of that in ensuring that we have investment into this country and bringing in billions of investment of work and employment opportunities for people who also go out to India, because that's one of the largest growing countries in the world in terms of their economy, and we need to be part of that.
OK. Tell me, what do the good people of Bassett Law actually make of Keir Starmer? You are in one of those Labour areas. It was obviously Conservative last time round, Labour before that. You've got the rise of reform. I would imagine that Nigel Farage may be enticing to quite a few people in Bassett Law, Brexit voting community, working class community. What do they actually think of Starmer? Do they think he's the right person to lead the Labour Party? Do you?
I ask of Sir Keir Starmer is to come to Bassett Law and talk to the people of Bassett Law. I want the connection between Westminster and constituencies of the North to be rebuilt. It's completely broken. So policy making and the way we talk about our delivery is going, people don't listen anymore. I think the moment that when we got into government in July, people voted for us with a sense of hope. They voted for Brexit hoping for change. They voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 hoping for change with the Brexit deal, and that didn't happen. And they voted for us in 2024 hoping that we would bring change. And the moment that the winter fuel payment announcement was made, in my view, that hope was broken, and now they're not listening to the work we're doing. They don't believe us anymore. And I want Keir Starmer and other cabinet members to come out to communities like mine and to talk to the voters about what we want to do and listen to them and listen to their priorities. And
when
so
was
that
the last time
relationship can be rebuilt.
When was the last time Starmer visited Bassetlaw?
He came in June 2024.
And how did he go down?
Well, he came to the hospital. He met with the staff there. And I believe that on a one-to-one basis, Keir, he engages, he listens, he is empathetic. And that's what we need. We want that relationship with people in my constituency.
And yet we've got this kind of talk about, you mentioned your constituency voting for Leave. It voted overwhelmingly for Leave back in 2016. And now we've got these leaked plans about Starmer wanting to re-ingratiate us with the EU, put British troops on EU missions, reintroduce a youth mobility scheme, make concessions on fishing rights. That's not the kind of behaviour that the Bassetlaw constituents will believe in, is it?
We need is there are businesses in my constituency who've lost trade as a consequence of the bureaucracy and the red tape they have had to endure since coming out of the EU. We need those connections to be smoothed over, and I want my businesses to be able to trade effectively, not just in Europe but across the world. And that's what the negotiation's about. There's not going to be any young people's exchanges, because I think that opens the risk to free movement of labour, and I don't want to see that happen. But what I want to see is businesses flourishing in this country because they're able to trade effectively right across the world, including in European countries.
You mentioned the winter fuel allowance earlier, Joe. Just in a yes or no terms, should the cut to winter fuel be scrapped?
What I want to see is a raising of the threshold. So it's not a yes or no. I want to see the raising of the threshold, so the people on the higher range of upper range of paying tax payments, they should not, they're obviously wealthy people, and therefore they do not particularly benefit from the winter fuel payment. So it's people who need that money in order to be able to live in the winter times.
And finally, does Starmer have a woman problem? That's what Louise Haigh has suggested, former Transport Secretary. And indeed, we had similar rhetoric from Rosie Duffield, who talks about a lads culture inside Number 10. Briefly, Joe, what's your view?
I haven't come across a lads culture. The moment I see it, I would shout out about it, because women have to be able to work effectively within the Houses of Parliament. And if there's any blockages in terms of misogyny or sexism, then it has to be called out and stopped immediately.
All right, Joe White, we need to leave it there for time reasons, but thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.
So much, thank you.
Thank you. Well, coming up next, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp will join me. After 14 years of Tory government in which they let the immigration crisis go completely out of control, are the Tories' proposals too little too late? Also be speaking to Richard Tice in the next hour. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, joining us now is the Chief Scout at the Scouting Association, Dwayne Fields. Dwayne, welcome to the programme. Thank you for joining us. You must be delighted at the partnership with the Princess of Wales, and the video is you were in that creation.
Yeah, so good morning, first of all. Yes, I'm absolutely delighted with it. The Princess of Wales has been one of our joint presidents for some time now, and hopefully that will continue. There's no reason to think it won't. And I am delighted. Her platform allows for her to really basically become a megaphone for all the great things we do in scouting. And there's no denying it. Every single week, we've got 500,000 young people and adult volunteers meeting, and they are learning, building friendships, learning those really important skills for life, having fun, like I said, making friendships. And they're doing all of this voluntarily. And just like I am, so is the Princess of Wales. What you've mentioned there, you know, the being at one with nature, being at peace in nature, I think it's really important for young people to spend time outdoors. We recognize from all the reports, and you yourself have even spoken about it, mental health issues that we have in society nowadays. Now, this isn't the silver bullet, but I think it is part of the solution. The more young people we can get to spend time in our natural spaces, I think the better we'll be, generally speaking, when we're talking about well-being. Now, in regards to what young people do in our scout groups, it could range from cooking to map reading to model making. Whatever skills the volunteer brings are the skills that we utilize in our groups.
I just don't think I would suit the shorts at my age, but that's it. But there's
Dwayne. Look great in the necker.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Joining me now is the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Lovely to see you this morning, Mr. Philp. You're going to try to disapply the Human Rights Act for immigration cases. You're going to table amendment to the bill this week. Tell me how that might work.
Good morning, Camilla. Yes, that's right. We think that some of the judgments handed down in recent years by judges based on human rights have been absolutely ridiculous and totally defied common sense. The problem is that the ECHR is very vaguely worded and judges have been interpreting it in a way that has been ridiculous. I'll give you one example. There was a Zimbabwean paedophile who was due to be deported back to Zimbabwe, quite right, yet a judge said, no, if he gets sent back to Zimbabwe, he might face, quotes, some hostility, and therefore he can stay in the UK. Well, what about the human rights of British children to be protected from this dangerous man and thousands of other dangerous criminals like him who managed to avoid deportation using the Human Rights Act and are basically facilitated by UK judges to stay here? And it's not just foreign criminals, it's other people with no right to be here. So we have a simple first step solution to that, and that is to essentially repeal the Human Rights Act in relation to all immigration matters, including foreign criminals, which means that UK judges will no longer be able to use human rights judgments to keep foreign criminals and others in the UK. We're going to push that to a vote. We've tabled it already. We're going to push it to a vote in Parliament tomorrow. That vote is likely to come tomorrow evening. We Conservatives will all be voting for it, but I fear Starmer and Yvette Cooper and those weak Labour MPs might vote against it.
Well, it probably will get voted down, and it begs the question, why on earth didn't you do this while you were in office for 14 years?
Well, look, I think the last government, speaking candidly, made some mistakes with immigration, and this is something that I think, frankly, we should have done. But look, we've got new leadership. I've been in this new job as Shadow Home Secretary for just a few months. We've developed this new policy in that short space of time, and we're going to put it to a vote in Parliament. We've got new leadership. There is a new, much tougher approach. We're developing specific, credible ideas that will actually fix this problem, and we're going to force them to a vote in Parliament. And look, if Labour use their massive majority to vote this down, which they probably will do, we will keep coming back again and again and again. We'll fight hard to win the next election, and if we do, this measure and many more measures we're going to develop will be in that manifesto so we can then implement them.
All right, well, I mean, we'll get on to your electoral chances come 2029 in just a moment. Sir Edward Lee, your colleague in the Conservatives, has said it was a catastrophic error that you made on immigration. When I ask you and your colleagues about legal migration and you talk about implementing a cap, you won't ever tell me what the cap is. Therefore, how can you be credible to the GB News audience if you won't say where you will set that cap, not least when immigration reached record levels under the Conservatives? What was it? 960,000 in 2023.
Yeah, that was far, far too high. That was completely wrong, and that was a catastrophic mistake. I agree with what Edward said about that. He's absolutely right. Now, there were some changes made by the last Conservative government late in their time in office, too late, I would honestly admit, which are getting the numbers down from that very high figure you mentioned down to about 350,000. But that is still too high. That is still too high.
What should it be capped at?
Measures that Labour have announced today, and they'll announce tomorrow. Well, let me come on to that. The little tinkering they're going to do. Yvette Cooper said this morning it would take it down by a further 50,000. That is not enough either. Now, we think there should be a binding cap voted for in Parliament. Let me come to that, Camilla. We're going to put that concept to a vote in Parliament tomorrow again. That'll be the other vote we force. Now, we are working on what that number's going to be. We're not going to shoot from the hip and just make a number up, but it will be a lot lower than that 300-odd thousand that is currently forecast.
100,000 then?
And the cut, we think it should be slashed. More probably, and it will be the number we'll announce in due course, but we're going to reduce it further by a lot more than 50,000. The reduction needs to be more than that. It needs to dramatically reduce,
I'm talking about,
even from
just
the
give us a
forecast levels
ballpark.
that are currently forecast.
Just give us a ballpark figure. We had David Cameron talking about tens of thousands. You don't want 340 or 50,000. So what kind of... Are you talking about between 100,000 and 200,000? Because Reform, who are nipping at your heels, are saying net zero immigration. So just give us a general figure. You must have one in mind.
No. Camilla, we're doing the detailed work now. One of the reasons why trust in politics has been undermined is because for too long politicians have just, when asked a question like the question you just asked, and it's a reasonable question,
you don't answer them.
They just chucked a figure out there without doing the work.
Let's move on to the polling. So the polling now, various different polls, including a recent YouGov one, is putting Reform above 30%. And I think the magic number as far as Reform is concerned is 31.5%. If the other two major parties fall down the polls, they don't need to have any pacts with the Tories. They can get a majority at the next general election. I mean, the figures at the moment, as they seem, Chris Philp, do point towards the Tories being eviscerated next time round, don't they? Just be honest, on the basis of the locals.
Look, those local elections the week before last were obviously very bad for us, but they were also very bad for Labour. Of course, just remember, we were defending a high point, right? Because those elections, when they were last contested 4 years ago, we did unbelievably well. So we were measuring our performance against the high point. But look, people are frustrated about the last government. They're very angry with the Labour government because they've put everyone's taxes up and lost control of our borders. And, you know, Reform have benefited from that. But look, polls move around. Just remember, back in 2019, do you remember? 2019, I think the Brexit Party, as it then was, won those European elections in about May or June of 2019. The Conservatives were down at about 10% or something like that. And just 6 months later, Boris won a landslide. So look, there's everything to play for. We are fighting hard. And let me tell you the difference between us and Reform, and it follows on from my last answer. The difference between us and Reform is that we are going to do the thinking to come up with the credible policies that can be implemented and that will actually work.
Point.
Look, Nigel Farage is very charismatic. Hang on, he's very charismatic. He's got great slogans, but he doesn't have a plan. He wrote an article in the Mail, I think yesterday, where he threw out a whole load of ideas that would have cost like 50 or 60 billion pounds with no idea how to pay for them.
We'll ask Richard Tice about Reform's ideas.
Now, that is not going to help anyone.
Well, is there anything wrong with Liz Truss on steroids? You're now criticising Liz Truss?
I'm just saying that you need
if you're
going to make promises, either to cut taxes... I'm just making the point that if you're going to make promises to either cut taxes or increase expenditure, you need to have a proper plan, a credible plan to do that.
Right.
And what Nigel Farage said in the Telegraph or the Mail, I think it was the Mail yesterday, wasn't credible. It was loads of promises that cost tens of billions of pounds without the first idea how to pay for them.
The problem here is that even you, as a Conservative minister, shadow minister, are talking about Nigel Farage more than Kemi Badenoch. Everyone's just talking about Nigel Farage. No one's talking about your leader because she's not cutting through as much.
To be fair, Camilla, you asked me a bunch of questions about reform and I answered them.
But you keep,
and if I'd gone and talked about Kemi Badenoch, you'd have been the first to jump down my throat and tell me to answer the question. Look, I think Kemi's doing a good job. Look,
Chris
really
Philp, I don't jump down anyone's throat. I just ask for straight questions and straight answers. On that note, can we just very briefly talk about this story on the front of the Sunday Telegraph with a former policeman being investigated for having Brexity materials in his house, including a copy of The Spectator and Douglas Murray's book? Now, it strikes me that the police is investigating this man, but hasn't seemingly looked into the TikTok groups that feature in a Channel 4 documentary on grooming gangs, where people are questioning the convictions of convicted child rapists and calling their victims dirty bitches and sick cows. Shouldn't the police be investigating these TikTok groups instead of people who might read the Telegraph?
That's right. I mean, I've read about that case. A 71-year-old man, former special constable, absolutely disgraceful, about a load of police officers went into his home, searched his entire house, including like all his clothes and his wife's clothes, and then detained him in a police station for a number of hours. Absolutely disgraceful. That should never have happened. We cannot have the police harassing clearly innocent people. He clearly hadn't committed a crime in that way. Absolutely disgraceful. I think the Kent police have apologised, quite right to, and that's why we Conservatives have said we would abolish non-crime hate incidents to stop this kind of nonsense happening in the first place. And yes, those people who are, and to the second part of your question, people who are expressing support for these vile rape gangs are beyond contempt.
Thank you, Chris Philp, for that final answer. Well, still to come, I've got Reform UK's Richard Tice joining me. The party is still riding high in the polls, as we've just discussed. But what's their actual plan for government? And could they be peaking too early? This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you've had a wonderful weekend and managed to enjoy the sunshine many of us have seen over the last couple of days. As we transition into next week, though, increasing influence of some showers, and already this evening they are spreading their way, particularly across southwestern regions. An area of rain will also blossom across Northern Ireland and gradually push its way towards western Scotland, turning heavier at times as well. Some clear spells elsewhere, but it is going to be a mild night. Temperatures holding up around 12 to 14 degrees Celsius for some of us. It'll be a little bit cooler and fresher out towards the east and the north, and there will be some low cloud, perhaps even fog, lingering around coastal areas of the far northeast of England, but primarily Scotland. This will burn back during the day, but the Northern Isles could see it linger throughout a good portion of Monday. Rain still in play across western Scotland to begin, this tending to ease, but outbreaks could linger for parts of eastern Northern Ireland and the Isle of Man as well. Later on into the morning and into the afternoon, we are going to see showers developing more widely across England and Wales. Focus for some of those heaviest ones to really start developing around the London region and then spread their way through the West Midlands to parts of Wales, Cheshire, also northern coasts of Somerset, Devon and Cornwall, potentially seeing some heavy thundery downpours. They will be hit and miss. Not everyone is going to see them, but where they do occur, torrential downpours and localised flooding is possible. If you miss them, though, temperatures climbing towards 25 degrees Celsius will feel very warm. Our area of low pressure that's bringing those showers will gradually drift its way southwards on Tuesday, so increasingly they are going to become confined to southwestern regions. There will still be some cropping up over the course of the day, and again, some very minor flooding is possible where we do get some torrential downpours, but central northern regions really seeing plentiful amounts of sunshine. A touch of cloud still lingering across the far north of Scotland, but the outlook for the second half of the week is for sunshine to really be the main dominating factor for many of us. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
From the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now in the studio is Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Welcome.
Very good morning.
Let's talk about immigration. Are you going to support the Tories in their quest to disapply the Human Rights Act from immigration policy?
Well, if the amendment is selected, then I would think so. But, I mean, we would, frankly, we need to leave the ECHR, which, of course, the Tories won't do. And, frankly, we should scrap the Human Rights Act and start again,
Is that
which,
what
again,
you're definitely going to
the
do?
Tories wouldn't do. So it's a step in the right direction. But all these things, as you quite rightly challenged Chris Philp on, why didn't they do this when they were in the office? And that's why we're doing so well in polls. That's why no one trusts them anymore. They had the chance and they blew it.
Can I just confirm, you'd definitely scrap the Human Rights Act if you were in power?
Yeah, we've got to get rid of the Human Rights Act,
ECHR.
start again, definitely leave the ECHR, which is a disaster.
There's a report in the Telegraph, I believe it is, saying that Reform is going to court to shut asylum hotels. How will that actually work in practice? Because people might rightly ask, well, where are you going to put asylum seekers?
So we've got a brilliant KC and a team of lawyers acting on a pro bono, no-cost basis. They've already started work, and we will be using every possible legal lever to try to resist bringing asylum seekers, whether it's into hotels or housing, in the councils we control. So, for example, in Lincolnshire, where we've just won control of the council, I've got an asylum seeker hotel in Skegness. And, yeah, we will be looking at every possible lever, whether it's...
them where?
Oh, very simple. The Greens and the Lib Dems are rather keen on them in their councils, so in the nicest possible way, you're welcome, folks.
Oh, you're going to emulate the policy of, I think it's a Texas governor, isn't it?
No,
Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott decided over in America, this is an American idea, that if you're very welcoming to migrants in Democrat areas, you're welcome to them. So are you seriously saying this?
Well, but that's the joy of democracy.
How are you going to make this work legally?
Our voters have said we don't want illegal immigration. We don't want mass uncontrolled immigration. And what they're saying to us, they've given us a mandate to do all we can in the councils that we control to stop this illegal immigration.
So which areas are you going to move these migrants to, sorry?
Well, at the end of the day, that's a matter for the government. I'm just making the point.
Is it workable, this, Richard Tice?
I'm making the point
that
we will
buses, send them to Bristol?
We will put every... No, you're missing the point. The point is we resist the use of hotels and housing, and we will use a variety of levers and legal mechanisms to try to make it unlawful for them in our areas. And then it's up to the government to send them somewhere else.
Are you being serious in this idea that you would like
deadly serious. Meetings are taking place this week.
No, about moving them to migrant welcome areas.
Look, I'm just slightly teasing the Lib Dems and the Greens because they seem so keen on asylum seekers. And we can have a little bit of fun in politics amongst all the seriousness.
Indeed we can. What about tents versus hotels? Andrea Jenkins, your now colleague in Greater Lincolnshire.
Well, thank heavens we're asking the question, because actually, if smart, organised tents are suitable for British Army in places like Afghanistan, why aren't they good enough for people who've come here illegally? We should have that debate and that discussion. But Camilla, the smart thing to do...
Smart and civilised tents for refugees. It doesn't quite work, does it? I mean, the reason why tents are smart and civilised when the army is in them is because these are people
because the army is structured and disciplined.
With hospital corners,
well,
right?
Maybe actually...
What
maybe we should have
refugee
a bit
camp made of tents has ever looked smart and civilised in your experience?
Well, maybe a bit of discipline and a bit of structure and a bit of fitness, it's good for all of us. So
what are you saying? You're going to put asylum seekers through some kind of military camp?
My real point is that we've got to process people quickly and remove them. If they've come here illegally, they should all be removed. And the other thing, of course, we've got to do is stop them crossing the channel. This year, I suspect we're going to be 45 to 50,000 people.
Yeah.
By the time of the next election, we could be looking at 150,000. And the British people are raging furious about this.
So your offshore processing is going to be your deterrent?
If you leave the ECHR...
You're reinvigorating Rwanda.
Well, you leave the ECHR and you pick up and take back, which France is legally obliged to stop them leaving their shores, and they're in breach of their their international duties.
Are you happy with the US trade deal? Because farmers are saying it sells them out, and we know you're on the side of farmers, right?
We are on the side of farmers, but look, it's work in progress. But actually, let's get this in context. For example, it's a partial trade deal. It's work in progress. It's not the full VAT option. And with regard to farming, for example, it doesn't cover things like chicken. It doesn't cover things like hormone-treated beef.
No, but it does cover beef. I mean, 13,000 tonnes of beef coming from the US. It's going to undercut the farmers of Aberdeen.
Look at the opportunities that, indeed, Aberdeen Angus beef is some of the best beef in the world, and Americans want to buy that great beef. So we've got great export opportunities.
So your Hampshire Star's done a good job, has he?
Actually, look, credit where credit's due. Because of the Brexit opportunity, he's been able to have a trade negotiation. So he's praising himself thanks to Brexit. Funny for a man who wanted a second referendum.
Although, are you as worried as Liam Fox about the great Brexit sellout when it comes to this
Yes, I'm very
EU
worried
summit?
indeed about that. And I think we've secured an extra debate on that because it's really concerning. He wants to handcuff us to a failing economic model.
What conversations have you had with Jacob Rees-Mogg about defecting to Reform?
None.
He's not ruling it out. What do you mean, none? You haven't spoken to him
You've just asked me a
directly.
question. I've simply answered it.
Do you mean you personally or Reform in general?
Me personally, and I suspect... No, look, Jacob...
hang on, finish that sentence.
Jacob's a lovely man, but he's a loyal Conservative.
Has anyone in the Reform Party been discussing defection with Jacob Rees-Mogg?
Not to my knowledge.
Nah, that's not a denial.
It is a denial.
Not to your knowledge doesn't mean no.
Well, I've no
yes or no? Has anyone spoken to Jacob Rees-Mogg about defection?
I have not spoken, and not to my knowledge has anybody spoken. I can't speak. We've got hundreds of councillors. They might have bumped into Jacob and had a fun chat in the pub.
All right, so you're saying you haven't, but you can't rule out somebody else having had such conversations.
I think I can reasonably rule it out.
And can we talk as well about this extraordinary story in the Sunday Telegraph? To be fair, the paper's been taken away, but I think you're familiar with it. This police officer, he was investigated for a tweet, but then police officers took away what they regarded as Brexity materials. That included a copy of The Spectator and a book by Douglas Murray.
Well, obviously, The Spectator's understandable. I mean, it's clearly a very difficult, dangerous magazine. I mean, the whole thing is outrageous, this attack on free speech. And the irony, this was a former police officer in the same county of Kent, for heaven's sake.
I know.
But the fact that he was arrested, I think they needed 6 former colleagues in Kent Police Force. I mean, the whole thing is utterly
obscene. Will you put a stop to this?
Of course, put a stop to all of that
the Tories are committed to saying get rid of non-crime hate incidents, policing of thought.
But once again, these all came in under the Tory regime, and that's why they'll never be forgiven, they'll never be forgotten.
The other point that's been made is the comparative lack of policing. I've made it with regard to the Channel 4 documentary on grooming gangs. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I've not actually seen that one.
There's a part in it where it reveals that there are TikTok groups operating which are kind of protesting the innocence of convicted child rapists and then referring to their victims as, excuse my French again, I've said this once already, but silly cows and bitches, talking about the victims. It does beg the question, why aren't the police investigating these groups?
Of course they should be. I mean, it's just outrageous. And I'm afraid the reason is because there is a cover-up going on in multiple areas, many towns, many local authorities and institutions, because people are guilty of an outrageous, scandalous cover-up.
So Reform are now in charge in Derbyshire, Staffordshire, Northamptonshire. Will you hold rape gang inquiries in those councils that you're now in control of? What can you commit to here?
Well, we've got to look at whatever we can legally get done in those areas. I haven't specifically got that answer today, but we are absolutely determined to try and hold these people to account. And it's extraordinary that Labour is still sort of sitting on the fence on this. Are they doing local inquiries? Are they not? Why won't they do a national inquiry?
But Rupert Lowe has funded a inquiry, hasn't he?
But of course, the issue is it hasn't got statutory powers, and that's why I think actually the Maggie Oliver initiative of actually running private prosecutions and looking at a judicial review may be faster and smarter to try and bring some people to justice and essentially to force through a different route action and accountability. We've just got to try all of these different things to see what works.
Quick question. You're not going to be campaigning for the abandonment of first past the post now, are you?
No, we've always believed in
manifesto.
PR.
Have you? You've always believed in PR?
We've always believed in PR.
Well, even when you're ahead in the polls and you can win a majority without the Tories,
we've got the Welsh and Holyrood elections in Scotland next week.
Let me just get this
next year.
Let me just get this confirmed.
Those under PR.
You are going to be campaigning for proportional representation now.
look, we stick to our word. We like proportional representation. We think it's fair. There's pluses and minuses to every situation.
I think you quite like first past the post now, don't you? If you're up at 31, 32 in the polls.
You're teasing me on a Sunday morning. It's outrageous.
I know, it's great fun. Can we talk about something very serious to finish? You've been speaking a lot in the House of Commons about the need to prescribe the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. What are your concerns there?
Well, I mean, we've got to prescribe the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're essentially a harbour of terrorism, whether it's the Houthis, Hezbollah, and and Hamas, of course. And there's no excuse. It's pathetic that the Foreign Office continues to prevent this. And we've also got suspects. I want to know the immigration status of some of these suspects that have been arrested for alleged terrorism offences.
Mm-hmm.
What's their immigration status? How long have they been? The British people need to know answers. And if you don't give information, people worry about a cover-up.
All right, Richard Tice, we need to leave it there, but thank you very much for your time this morning. Now, coming up next, we're going to be speaking about trade with former Trade Secretary Sir Liam Fox. He's going to talk us through what's in the US and the India deals and, indeed, what they really mean for Britain. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, only on GB News.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The area of low pressure moving towards the UK at the moment is also going to be affecting parts of Europe as well. Widespread showers and thunderstorms over the next couple of days, particularly for France, but also into parts of northern Spain and Portugal. Some of the driest conditions actually down towards Gibraltar and southern areas of Iberia. Some showers also developing across parts of Italy, through the Adriatic and potentially over towards Greece as well. Turkey not faring too badly, but overall things will be settling down as we head over the forthcoming week with drier conditions prevailing.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're
proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Sir Liam Fox, the former Secretary of State for International Trade, in the studio. Lovely to see you this morning.
You too, Camilla.
Right, let's get stuck into these two deals. Let's talk about the US one first of all. I mean, Donald Trump described it as big and great. It's huge, and they're both on first-name terms, and it was all very cosy in that quite bizarre choreography in the Oval Office last week. Is it as good as they're saying?
Well, it's neither full and comprehensive, nor is it historic. It's a slight improvement on the bad position that we were in after the new Trump administration applied the tariffs. So it's not a catastrophe. It's better than nothing. The question is, how much better than nothing is it?
And farmers are now complaining of being betrayed. We've got the prospect of 13 tonnes of US beef coming into the country. That was always a concern when you were doing trade negotiations, I know. And equally, we've got a watering down, potentially, of the digital services tax, so it's a win for the tech bros of Silicon Valley. I mean, there is some quite nice deals to be done, perhaps, on the Rolls-Royce engines going over steel and aluminium, subject to no tariff at all. But in general, it seems like Donald has got the better part of this deal, not least because at the end of the day, we were better off before Trump 2.0.
We were better off before any tariffs were put on. Clearly, the aim of the government was to protect British steel and to protect British cars in terms of exports. The trouble with cars is we've only got a reduction in tariff if we don't export any more than we did last year.
Yes, exactly.
So we're not allowed to increase our exports to the United States. So it's disappointing. I suppose that any improvement, any liberalisation of trade is to be welcomed.
Yeah.
And, of course...
Same said for India?
Yes, indeed. Any liberalisation in the global economy at the present time is a good thing, given the threats that it faces. But, of course, the irony of the whole thing is that the government were using the one thing that they didn't want, which was their Brexit freedoms, to enable them to achieve both of these objectives.
Well, let's get on to Brexit and what is being billed by Leavers as a kind of great EU sellout. We've got these sort of secret talks going on. We're fast approaching an EU summit, which could lead to the giveaway of, we think, some of our hard-fought-for fishing rights, concessions on security, and maybe even the notion of sending our troops into some EU operations. We've got this whole youth mobility scheme. Sum this up as a lever. I mean, is this a sellout to the EU? What do you think?
Yes, it's potentially a complete betrayal of Brexit. What the government are talking about is what is called regulatory alignment. Now, regulatory alignment means we would be rule takers from Brussels.
So this is like the Swiss model?
Without having any say in how those regulations are created, which would put us in a worse position than when we were actually in the European Union. And when you think about trade, but to take it back to trade, it would tie us to the EU rules to ease trade with the European Union. But the rest of the global economy, the OECD predicts, will grow at over 3% this year, when the European Union will grow at 1%. So what's the point of tying us into regulations with the slowest growing group in the world when we should be increasing our trade elsewhere? And remember, we have a trade surplus with the rest of the world, but already a trade deficit with the European Union.
Why is he doing it? Because he can't leave behind his Remainer past?
Because Keir Starmer was deeply committed to remaining in the European Union, as are many of his colleagues, as I think is the Governor of the Bank of England, and they want to try to reverse the Brexit position. What we should be doing is to take advantage of our Brexit freedoms, to be increasing our share of trade with the fastest growing part of the global economy, because that's ultimately what will produce greater prosperity for the people in Britain.
Is Kemi Bade not cutting through enough in opposition on some of these issues? I mean, I haven't heard her say much about the EU deal. She comes out in response to the US deal, says we've been shafted. That was probably a bit of an overstatement, wasn't it? Should she have issued that statement immediately, criticising the US trade deal? And there's actually some good things in it.
Well, there are some not bad things in it, if you want to put it that way.
Shafted, though.
Well, I think that we should be, in opposition, I think we need to be credible at all times. I think we need to set out our position. I think Kemi Badenoch's got one of the brightest minds in politics. I think that some of the media operation needs to be improved a great deal.
Are you seriously worried about being blown out of the water by reform come 2029? I mean, the local elections were not great.
I remember living through the period when, of course, the Social Democrats were going to replace both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party.
This is a different prospect, isn't it? Because Labour is also as unpopular as the Tories right now.
Well, remember at the time under Michael Foot, and when Mrs Thatcher was very unpopular, you had this great Social Democrats. They were going to win the election. When we got to 1983 election, Mrs Thatcher won with a huge majority. So these things change. I think what reform reflect are an unhappiness with the political system. I've just come back from Hungary a couple of days ago. Voters are angry right across the Western world. They're not entirely sure what they're angry about a lot of the time, nor indeed what the solutions are to that anger.
Well, Reform are channeling a lot of anger, I think, about immigration. They're also raising some serious concerns about sectarianism in British politics. I wrote about it for The Telegraph yesterday. Just before you came on air, you were talking about the situation in Pakistan and India. Got this fragile ceasefire. How worried are you that those tensions are going to spill over into the streets of Britain? Maybe they already have. And about sectarianism in general?
I think it is a problem. I think that in Britain we need to accept that you can't just celebrate diversity, you have to celebrate commonality. Because if you don't celebrate commonality, the fact that we're all British, and you simply talk about the diverse elements that people have, you don't end up with diversity, you end up with fragmentation and ghettoisation. And that's the real problem.
Do you think we're at that stage in the UK?
I think we've been there for some time. I think that we haven't been talking about what unites us, the things that make us British, and the things that we need to demand from British citizens in terms of how they approach the country. So I think a lot of that culture change needs to come. I very much agree with your piece that that is a problem that we haven't been tackling. I think that across our political system, there's been an unwillingness to deal with some of these cultural issues in politics, always trying to find a policy solution or a legislative solution when a lot of the problems we have are cultural.
Let's just have a final thought on the situation between Russia and Ukraine, because we've now got Vladimir Putin apparently opening the door to direct talks with President Zelensky. We have had what seems to have been quite a successful summit in Ukraine between Starmer, the Poles and indeed the French. What's your prediction for the outcome of this? Do you think that a deal can be done finally?
Well, I think you can get a strategic pause from Russia. But in 2008, they invaded Georgia. We did very little. President Obama had a reset at that time, and Putin said, thank you very much, I'll also take Crimea, which he did. And then, of course, when we didn't react to that again, to any great extent, he went further into Ukraine itself. Putin is a serial liar, he's a murderer, he's a tyrant, he's an international criminal. He's the chief of what can only be described as a thugocracy in Russia. Do I believe that he can actually be pacified? Do I believe that his word is worth anything? No, I don't. He gave his word to Ukraine in the Budapest Memorandum when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. And part of that agreement was that the borders of Ukraine would be respected and that Russia would be one of the countries guaranteeing peace to Ukraine. It was worth nothing. Putin will continue his behaviour. Once KGB, always KGB. It's not a pleasant thing to think, and we'd love to think that we can do business with him. Will his word be worth anything? I think at best a ceasefire is a strategic pause for Putin.
OK. We're running out of time, but very quickly, does the US president need to strong-arm him more? We've seen a degree of appeasement, I think, from Donald Trump when it comes to Russia.
We've seen a number of American presidents believe they could do business with Putin only for the reality of Putin's character and behaviour to show them that he cannot be accommodated.
OK. Liam Fox, we need to leave it there. Fascinating discussion. Thank you very much for coming in this morning. Lovely to see you. So all that leaves me to say is have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. I'll be back next week, 9:30.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Hope you've had a wonderful weekend and managed to enjoy the sunshine many of us have seen over the last couple of days. As we transition into next week, though, increasing influence of some showers, and already this evening they are spreading their way, particularly across southwestern regions. An area of rain will also blossom across Northern Ireland and gradually push its way towards western Scotland, turning heavier at times as well. Some clear spells elsewhere, but it is going to be a mild night. Temperatures holding up around 12 to 14 degrees Celsius for some of us. It'll be a little bit cooler and fresher out towards the east and the north, and there will be some low cloud, perhaps even fog, lingering around coastal areas of the far northeast of England, but primarily Scotland. This will burn back during the day, but the Northern Isles could see it linger throughout a good portion of Monday. Rain still in play across western Scotland to begin, this tending to ease, but outbreaks could linger for parts of eastern Northern Ireland and the Isle of Man as well. Later on into the morning and into the afternoon, we are going to see showers developing more widely across England and Wales. Focus for some of those heaviest ones to really start developing around the London region and then spread their way through the West Midlands to parts of Wales, Cheshire, also northern coasts of Somerset, Devon and Cornwall, potentially seeing some heavy thundery downpours. They will be hit and miss. Not everyone is going to see them, but where they do occur, torrential downpours and localised flooding is possible. If you miss them, though, temperatures climbing towards 25 degrees Celsius will feel very warm. Our area of low pressure that's bringing those showers will gradually drift its way southwards on Tuesday, so increasingly they are going to become confined to southwestern regions. There will still be some cropping up over the course of the day, and again, some very minor flooding is possible where we do get some torrential downpours, but central northern regions really seeing plentiful amounts of sunshine. A touch of cloud still lingering across the...
You could be the next big winner on the road in this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. Imagine the fun you could have in this luxurious home from home worth over £67,000. We'll also give you £5,000 in tax-free cash to make your next getaway a great one. And it could be all yours. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries